On November 23, 2025, an extraordinary and devastating hailstorm struck the city of Erechim, in the northern region of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. What unfolded that afternoon would go on to be remembered as one of the most violent and destructive meteorological events in the city's recent history. In barely minutes, the storm paralyzed Erechim and left behind a trail of destruction that tested the resilience, solidarity, and response capacity of tens of thousands of residents. The day itself had begun without any sign of impending catastrophe. Temperatures rose gradually throughout the late morning, consistent with an early summer pattern typical for southern Brazil. The skies were mostly calm, with only subtle hints of atmospheric instability visible to trained meteorologists. But beneath this deceptive tranquility, the atmosphere was storing energy. Warm, moisture-rich air from the north had been advancing toward a semi-stationary frontal system that lingered over the southern portion of the state. This convergence of heat, moisture, and stalled frontal boundaries created an invisible but powerful instability corridor in the mid- and lower atmospheric layers, a setup known to generate violent convective storms. As the hours passed, meteorological radar imagery would later show increasingly strong vertical development, towers of cumulonimbus clouds rising rapidly, signaling the birth of deep convection. But for residents on the ground, the shift felt almost instantaneous. At approximately 4:40 p.m. clouds over Erechim darkened with unusual speed. A calm afternoon suddenly felt heavy, oppressive. Within minutes, the sky transformed from dull gray to an ominous, nearly black mass. What began as mild rain escalated abruptly. The first hailstones were small, almost harmless, but the transition to larger, dangerous hail was shockingly fast. Residents captured videos that spread across social media, documenting hailstones the size of large marbles, then chicken eggs, and in some reported cases even larger. These ice projectiles struck metal roofs with explosive noise, shattered windows, and pounded vehicles with enough force to dent doors, crack windshields, and puncture weakened structures. For many, the sound alone was terrifying, a deafening barrage of ice hitting metal, glass, and concrete. As hail intensified, strong wind gusts joined the assault. Trees bent violently, some snapping at the trunk. Power lines whipped and eventually gave way as poles toppled. Streets filled with debris, shattered glass, metal sheets ripped from rooftops, broken tiles, and branches torn from trees. Emergency services were immediately overwhelmed. Firefighters, civil defense teams, and municipal workers raced to respond to simultaneous calls, structural collapses, blocked roads, fallen cables, and flooding caused by clogged drains. Large sections of the city lost power. Entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness not long after the storm began, leaving families to navigate a dangerous situation without electricity or communication. Early damage assessments painted a grim picture. Local fire departments initially estimated around 5,000 homes damaged, but the true scale quickly became apparent. City authorities soon confirmed that approximately 30,000 residences had suffered some level of impact, from shattered windows and broken roof tiles to partial structural collapse. Businesses were hit hard as well, storefronts destroyed, glass facades shattered inward, and interiors severely affected by water and ice intrusion. Thousands of private vehicles were damaged or destroyed, many of them left exposed on roads, driveways, or parking lots. On the highway near the city, drivers endured some of the storm's most harrowing moments. Hail hammered vehicles with such ferocity that windshields fractured or imploded entirely, leaving occupants vulnerable to incoming shards of glass and ice. Car roofs dented under the weight of the barrage, and in extreme cases, hoods warped or buckled. Recognizing the escalating crisis, the municipal authorities declared a state of emergency the same evening. The decree activated the full capacity of public institutions, the formation of a crisis management committee, deployment of rapid response teams, and initiation of emergency shelter plans. Community centers and schools converted into temporary shelters for families whose homes were rendered unsafe. Donation campaigns were launched, and volunteers rushed to help. Hospitals and emergency clinics saw a surge of injured residents, many with cuts, bruises, and lacerations caused by flying debris and shattered glass. The main hospital quickly approached capacity, prompting the rapid setup of an auxiliary emergency unit to absorb the overflow. Local officials issued critical warnings, Citizens were urged not to climb damaged roofs without proper safety equipment, and to be alert to the risk of collapse, sharp debris, or remaining in stable structures. Downed power lines created an additional layer of danger. Fallen electrical cables lay across roads and sidewalks, forcing emergency crews to coordinate carefully as they worked to secure the most affected zones. Public advisories urged residents to stay indoors unless absolutely necessary. By nightfall, the scale of devastation became even clearer. Photos and videos circulating online portrayed neighborhoods blanketed in white, as if a winter snowstorm had swept in, but this was ice from a violent, destructive hail event. Rooftops lay exposed, vehicles were battered beyond repair, and streets were littered with debris. For many families, the shock was immense. Residents described the storm with disbelief. "I've seen hail before, but never like this. It felt like the sky was falling apart." Meteorologists provided more technical insight as data was analyzed. The convergence of tropical humidity with the semi-stationary front generated deep instability, with temperature gradients of nearly 10 degrees Celsius between nearby regions. These contrasts fueled powerful updrafts, strong enough to suspend hailstones in the upper atmosphere long enough for multiple layers of ice to accumulate. Radar signatures later confirmed the presence of hail cores, dense zones within supercell-like structures capable of producing large hailstones and destructive downbursts. The economic impact was severe. Preliminary estimates pointed to millions of dollars in losses, damages to homes, vehicles, public infrastructure, and commercial buildings. Farmers reported significant losses as well. Greenhouses damaged, irrigation equipment dented, and crops such as soybeans torn apart. For a region heavily dependent on agriculture, the storm represented not only an immediate crisis but also potential long-term economic challenges. Insurance companies mobilized teams to assess claims, but many residents lacked adequate coverage, raising concerns about the financial burden of reconstruction. Local officials formally requested aid from the state and federal governments to support recovery efforts. Beyond the physical destruction, the psychological impact was considerable. Many residents experienced anxiety, fear, and emotional distress following the event. Mental health teams were deployed alongside other responders to provide support. In the days that followed, the city mobilized into action. Cleanup operations were organized, temporary shelters expanded, and engineers inspected damaged structures to determine which were safe to re-enter. Power crews worked tirelessly, replacing broken poles, restringing cables, and restoring electricity to thousands of households. Officials promised long-term reforms, stronger building codes, improved early warning systems, and investment in infrastructure more resistant to hail and intense wind. Public discussions emerged about the need for improved communication strategies, especially for vulnerable populations who may not have received or understood weather alerts. For climate experts, the Erechim hailstorm added to a growing list of extreme weather events in southern Brazil, events that appear to be increasing in frequency or intensity. While no single event can be definitively attributed to climate change, shifting patterns of atmospheric instability, humidity anomalies, and stronger thermal contrasts are consistent with broader climatic trends. Ultimately, the storm not only tested the city's resilience but also became a defining moment in its contemporary history. Communities united to rebuild, neighbors helped neighbors, and local leaders emphasized the importance of preparedness in a world where extreme weather may grow more common. Erechim's story is one of impact, but also of recovery, adaptation, and collective strength. Its people are rebuilding, learning, and preparing for a future where vigilance, infrastructure, and community cooperation will be essential. As reconstruction efforts advanced through the week, the true magnitude of the hailstorm's impact became even more evident. Municipal teams, together with state support, began conducting systematic surveys of neighborhoods. Drone footage revealed patterns of destruction that were difficult to perceive from the ground. Entire blocks with roofs punctured, glass strewn like confetti across gardens, and small pockets of ice that had accumulated in shaded areas, persisting long after the storm had passed. In some lower-lying regions, ice mixed with clogging debris had briefly created localized flooding, complicating early rescue missions. What emerged from these assessments was not only a clearer picture of the physical damage, but also of the vulnerabilities that had long existed within certain communities. Many of the hardest-hit neighborhoods were those with older infrastructure, aging roofs, or buildings not constructed to withstand intense winds or large hail impact. Engineers noted that lightweight roofing materials, common in many southern Brazilian homes, had been particularly susceptible to cracking or complete perforation. Families who already lived in precarious conditions now faced an uncertain path forward, as repairs required funds and expertise far beyond their means. In response, the municipality launched a coordinated multi-phase recovery plan. The first phase focused on clearing hazardous debris, broken tiles, splintered wood, and the sharp remnants of shattered windows. The second phase involved temporarily covering damaged roofs with tarps to protect homes from additional rainfall. Volunteers worked side by side with firefighters and civil defense personnel, moving through streets with ladders, gloves, and improvised tools to secure vulnerable homes. These efforts were often carried out under unpredictable weather conditions, as new rain showers repeatedly interrupted the work. Parallel to physical reconstruction, there was a growing need for emotional and psychological support. Schools and community centers designated rooms where psychologists and social workers offered counseling. For many families, especially children, the sound of hail hitting metal or glass now triggered heightened anxiety. Some described difficulty sleeping or feeling uneasy whenever clouds gathered. Health professionals emphasized that such reactions were normal, given the intensity of the event, and that emotional recovery would take time. Local schools, several of which had suffered broken windows and damaged roofs, had to suspend classes temporarily. Some resumed instruction in partial capacity, using undamaged areas while waiting for repair crews. Businesses also faced substantial obstacles. Commercial districts saw storefronts shattered, inventory destroyed, and interior ceilings damaged by water infiltration. For small business owners, this represented not just material loss but a threat to their livelihoods. Many were forced to close indefinitely while awaiting inspections, insurance evaluations, or government assistance. Local chambers of commerce began organizing financial relief discussions, advocating for tax suspensions, emergency credit lines, and accelerated insurance processing. Meanwhile, public infrastructure endured a heavy toll. Bus terminals had their coverings torn open, public parks saw benches shattered and trees uprooted, and several municipal buildings sustained broken windows and roof damage. Traffic signals malfunctioned due to electrical issues, forcing police officers to direct vehicles manually at major intersections. In the rural outskirts, agricultural roads became difficult to navigate, especially where fallen trees obstructed access. One of the more overlooked aspects of the storm's impact involved wildlife. Environmental groups reported that birds, particularly small species nesting in urban trees, suffered significant losses. Many nests were destroyed, and the ice caused direct harm to animals unable to seek proper shelter. Volunteers from local environmental organizations organized rescue operations for injured birds and small mammals, bringing them to treatment centers until they could recover. As days turned into weeks, scientific institutions began analyzing the meteorological profiles recorded during the event. Weather radar data showed impressive vertical velocities within the storm's core, supporting the growth of unusually large hailstones. The combination of intense updrafts, capable of suspending heavy hailstones at high altitudes, and the availability of supercooled water contributed to the accumulation of dense ice layers. Several atmospheric scientists noted that this wasn't merely a strong hailstorm, but one that displayed characteristics typically seen in the most severe convective outbreaks in subtropical regions. A debate began taking shape within academic and governmental circles. If storms of this magnitude become more frequent, how should cities such as Erechim adapt? Proposals included strengthening building codes to incorporate hail-resistant materials, redesigning roofing structures, and reinforcing power grid components to withstand high-intensity wind and ice impacts. Urban planners and civil engineers emphasized the importance of resilient infrastructure in the face of increasingly unpredictable weather patterns.